Welcome everyone on episode 17 with my boy Alton Wheelhouse. Is that how you say your last name?
Alton Wheelhouse.
Yeah. Alton
Wheelhouse.
Okay. And obviously I'm your main host, Coach YoYo, and we have our co-host again, Coach Nik. I think you're stuck at this co-host.
You know, I'm fine with it. I'm okay. The imprint of my ass is starting to form in this chair. So
That's true.
I was going to say, it suits you well. You look good in there.
Thank you.
It's true.
Thank you, yeah.
So
I'm going to have to start coming back all the time.
So one of the reasons why we want Alton to come on our podcast, obviously we do this to pretty much almost every client that we go through the program with, but kind of summarize what we want to go through first is we're going to talk about your transformation, and then we're going to talk about, you know, how long has it been since you haven't been in an actual hospital?
Yeah.
And we're also going to talk about the journey between you and Tasha, which is your wife. And also I coach both of them as well. So they're a couple's deal. And you guys made a tremendous changes in the last 9 months. It's been amazing. So we're going to talk about that, right? So we're going to talk about your journey from start to end. And so introduce yourself.
I love it. So, hey everybody, I'm Alton Wheelhouse. I am huge into personal development. I'm a coach and an entrepreneur. I've spent a lot of time over the last 20 years helping people grow and building and growing businesses. It's been wonderful. And over the last couple of years have been going through, a couple of years, a little over a decade and a half, I've been going over my own health journey. And started with June of last year. It's now end of March. So yeah, about 9 months. And during that time, I think when I started with you, I was around 230, 240, and currently weighing in at 205. But the amount of fat that I've lost is substantially more than that because we've also been building tons of muscle that I've never had in my life.
I was going to say, yeah, not just the amount of fat you lost, but the amount of muscle you have put on.
Yeah. I mean, I know you guys have seen the pictures of me at my biggest, but I'll send you some pictures later of me before that point. Oh, because I've actually been on the opposite side of the spectrum as well.
Underweight.
6'4", the least that I weighed was about 130.
Holy hell.
And,
wait, what?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, you know, and that was part of what led into the whole situation was for so long I was training myself just to put calories into my body. And then finally my metabolism slowed down. I moved to a more sedentary lifestyle. I got married and all these other things started to stack up. My stress started going through the roof. I was having other health problems. And then I ballooned all the way up to my biggest, just under 260.
Wow. Oh, you were 260 before that.
Yeah. But that whole,
you literally doubled your own weight.
Yeah. But it was all fat. Like it was not muscle.
Wow.
So, and that compounded a lot of the other issues that were going on.
Yeah.
But for, my wife and I have been married for about 8 years now, coming up on 9.
Congrats.
And thank you. And while we were dating and getting engaged, I just gave her the heads up, like, I have an end-of-life diagnosis. I'm supposed to be dead by 30.
Who gave you that number?
There was a doctor that I was working with. I was having a lot of pain issues. I was having a lot of neurological and psychological issues, and everything just kept seeming to degrade farther and farther. We'd tried medicine. It had worked for a little while. Then it'd fall off and things would get worse. And at that point, I was under the poverty line, living on my own. And they were like, look, the only thing that he could really come up to explain it was that there was some kind of degenerative disease going on with my brain. The only way that we could prove it would be to go get an MRI and CAT scan. I didn't have the money to do it, so I just accepted that that's what it was. But
how does that make you feel at that time? How old were you?
So I was 21, 22 when that came out. And it was an interesting and terrifying moment. I actually had a conversation with my girlfriend at the time who I'd been thinking about proposing to and just told her, if somebody knows that they're running out of time, should they get married? And she said, absolutely not. It's one of the most selfish things that somebody could do if they know that they don't have a life to live with their spouse. Wow. And it threw me for a loop.
On top of everything you're dealing with, turning to the one constant you have, for them to say that, and you're like, well, now that, that constant's not going to be there.
Yeah. So instead, that was when I really started to get serious about, building businesses because I figured if I find somebody who's the right fit, I will leave something for them.
Yep.
And so pulled myself up, had just gotten above the poverty line for the first time shortly before I met Tasha. And she came on board and supported me every step of the way. But for the duration of our relationship, I was going to the ER, the urgent care, the hospital every 3 to 4 months like clockwork. I would rebound, I'd do better for a while, and then things would get worse, pain would get worse. I'd just start shutting down, physical tremors and a lot of other issues, blackouts, hallucinations, it was getting bad. Anyway, all this to be said, don't worry, the story gets much lighter. We just decided, you know what, we're just going to make the most of it. Yeah. And so we did. I got to 30. I wasn't dead. And I said, okay, well then we're going to just keep figuring this out. We got a couple of other diagnoses around ADHD and autism sitting right on the edge of the spectrum. That's relevant, which we'll come back to in a minute, because I said, okay, well then maybe this is all just in my mindset, anxiety that's causing other issues. So I'm just going to focus on that. And along that journey, we ultimately ended up finding out about Yo through a mutual friend who'd been working with you. And when I came on board, my whole focus and conversation was just like, this is just mindset. Like, I just have to push through. I'm just going to work with a coach so that there's somebody who's holding me accountable, who's checking my nutrition and my other things, since I have no idea how close to the line or how to do any of this stuff. And as we were going through, I was putting in the effort. I was 1-to-1 on my meal plan, and we were watching as I wasn't gaining muscle, and things were continuing to cause problems. And so then I'd put off getting blood work at the beginning because I'd literally been in the ER just a couple of months before, and the blood work that they'd checked came back clean. You know, it was what it was, but Yo insisted that I go and get a full blood panel done, including testosterone. We found out, I was outside the reference range, and testosterone is one of the preliminary molecules that's necessary for dopamine regulation, which in fact is the core issue with both ADHD and autism. And then it spins out into digestion, and it spins out into everything else, not to mention the fact that I literally was incapable of building the muscle just because the testosterone wasn't there to stimulate the growth. And so, there was definitely some major mindset stuff that had to be resolved. I'm grateful that we tackled that first, but the nutrition, hydration, exercise, all the other parts, and especially understanding that hormonal panel has changed everything. And I actually had to deal with the opposite grief problem of, well, now I'm not going to die. What do I do with the rest of my life?
Which I want to hurry and rewind to that. So you said, you know, they gave you a timeline of essentially as to when your life was going to end. You hit that age. When you turned 30, was it more of like a relief of like, hey, I'm still here? Or was it more almost like you're waking up every day like, is today the day?
By that point, fortunately, I'd come to a much better place mentally. The decision that Tasha and I had made was that we were just going to do everything that we could to extend my life as best as we could. And so, you know, I turned 30, and it was definitely an emotional moment, but it really was just like, okay, you know, we made it past the first finish line. How far can we go? And just trying a lot of different things and not putting too much weight or hope into any of them. You know, over the 8 years that she and I had been married before we started working with you guys, we spent about $250,000 on medical care. A lot of which is still being paid off and paid down. But that was the whole situation. Was we're just going to keep trying. I'm not dead yet, so we're just going to keep trying.
Though that's a lot of money.
That is. That's something we were talking about earlier that people don't think about. You know, whether it's they're dealing with current health issues, or we hear it all the time. You know, oh, I'll worry about it later. Right now, I feel healthy. I feel good. I'll worry about it later. But you don't know when later is going to happen. And you don't know how difficult it's going to be to make those changes if you keep putting it off. You keep going to the hospital, you keep getting these medical bills. It's going to add up, and that can cause a lot of issues.
Let's address that really quick.
Yeah.
So the people that are listening to this right now, that you think about, I don't care how old you are, right? At least if you're above 20, maybe 30, maybe 40, and you don't think about your health in that kind of way. I know less than 30 of you, 30 years old, think that you guys are invincible. You're not. I promise you, you're not. In fact, the youngest client that got their blood work done, and I found out that he had a low testosterone, was 22 years old. So hormonally, he's in balance at 22 years old. So there's a lot of you out there walking around outside of whatever you got going on, not understanding what's going on with your lipids panel, your metabolic panel, doesn't understand your hormone panels. Like you have no idea. You think, oh, I just have this pain in my body, whatever that is.
Yep.
Yeah.
But until you get the blood work done and seek a professional that can help you and understand exactly what's going on and how to fix it, it might be too late.
But it's tricky though, right? Because in our 20s, we very much just partied. Every weekend I was getting drunk. I was drinking an ungodly amount of beer, going to Buffalo Wild Wings, going to all these restaurants and eating and having fun and this and that. And, your 20s, you do need to have fun. You need to figure out what you want to do with your life, but you need to have fun. But you have to find that balance of, if you get your blood work done, you have low testosterone, you have cholesterol issues, and you're only 22, you need to address it now. So you do need to tell your friends, hey, I can't drink this weekend. I can't go eat this. I can't go do that. But I think that fear of missing out is what prevents people from wanting to, at a young age,
and
get their blood work
fear
done.
of the unknown, because you don't know what you want to know. Like a lot of you don't want to get your MRI done, don't want to go to the doctor to get your blood work done because you don't want to know.
The second you find out a diagnosis or what you have, it makes it real.
It makes it real.
Yeah. And too often we also see that happens when people use that as a crutch as to why they can't change. Oh, well, I'm severe type 2 diabetic, so it's going to take a lot to reverse it. So, I'm trying to figure out. It's like, no, it's reversible. You just got to stop making excuses and put in the work.
Yeah. And what I've observed a lot as I've been working with people who have seen the transformation that has happened and said, hey, I want to get your results. Like, how do I get there? And we've asked a lot of the questions about those kinds of things is I found when I ask, why are you going to the parties? Like, why is eating out such a big deal to you? There's those underpinning things. And if the only reason that you're going out to be with people is because you don't like yourself, then you're just compounding an issue. You're putting it onto a credit card and hoping that the bill will be able to be paid at some point. And it just doesn't work.
But I like that you said that, though, because that was the biggest reason why I went out. And I would see my friends every weekend, and we'd go to someone's house or apartment, we'd play beer pong, and just be like the 8-9 of us. We'd just hang out, have fun. Yeah. And I'll never say that I was an alcoholic because I don't know what addiction is like, and I'm thankful I don't have that personality. But I drank heavily and have a lot of blackout weekends, times I don't remember, got sick, hungover. But when I think about it now, I was very much doing it because I didn't like myself. I didn't want to be alone with myself. I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts. I had no confidence. I was single for 3, 4, 5 years. Never went on dates because of my own, insecurities and this and that. And when I think back to it now, like it's the times of hanging out was fun, but the underlying, issue as to why I was doing that it's depressing.
Did you find that you felt overwhelmed by the concept of making changes?
I mean, it's hard, right? It's hard to make any kind of a change, whether, no matter how minuscule it is or how large it is. But it was very much like I knew in the back of my head, I knew I had depression. I knew I was having issues with, suicidal thoughts. I had issues with my confidence, not knowing how to go talk to women. I didn't want to date. I had all these things. And I got too comfortable in my excuses and too comfortable with the position that I was in. And Alton, and Johan knows as well, and for a lot of people listening, you probably know it's easier and less scary to stay where you're at than it is to admit to what's going on, go tell someone what's going on, and then put in the work to make it change. Because now it's real. Now you have to be vulnerable. Now you have to address it. And these are things that are extremely difficult to address and think about.
Can be. Yeah. Absolutely.
And something that I want to address as well. And especially for the people that are starting out their journey or think about starting out their journey. I'm going to say this. Your weight and who you are at that time, no matter how big, how small you are, does not define your worth. 100%. I'm going to tell you that right now. That doesn't exist. We are the one who puts that thought in our mind, right? But can you be better? Can you do better? Can you eat healthier? Yes, absolutely. And you're right, Nick. I mean, back in the day, we used to drink as well. And now that I think back on that, well, I'm always drinking every single weekend because I want to fill that void. What was that? Well, that's because I didn't like who I was at the time. I wasn't worthy enough. I didn't value myself the way I value myself now, right? So now that we're coaching, you're a coach as well. And we have to educate people. It's okay not to be okay.
Absolutely.
It's okay.
And at the same time, those moments still happen where you do just get together with your friends and have a drink, something responsible.
Absolutely.
You know, and even in this concept of an unfinished lifestyle, it really is that. It is a lifestyle. We have to accommodate for those choices. Part of that is understanding why, so that we're doing it for a purpose, with intention, within reason. And then the other part is being able to build the rest of our life in such a way that when it is time to celebrate a birthday and sit down and eat a ice cream cake, it doesn't bother us. It doesn't cause a problem that's going to compound and compound and compound. It's just a day, a celebration, the way that it should be.
But exactly that, though, you had a why. And all of us eventually found that why that keeps us going, right? But we get people who come in and they just want to do it for the sake of doing it because they see Alton did it. They see that we do it. They see that Colton did it, or they've came across one of our videos and were inspired by the client. Well, I want to do what they're doing. It's like, well, why? What's your reason for reaching out? Because you saw the video or because you finally had enough of your own shit? And 9 times out of 10, I'm confident in saying they don't know why. And if you don't know your why and you try to start, you can only get so far. But if you don't have that reason, you don't have that voice in your head saying, this is why we're doing it. And I brought it up on our community call earlier. You know, I'm at the heaviest I've ever been, which is around 200 pounds. And I'm happy with it. But, you know, in my mind, there's still things I want to improve on, this and that. But I play soccer twice a week. And I was talking to my older brother, and he keeps asking me, why aren't you back on the field? Why do you play keeper? And I'm like, well, because I can't run. I'm too heavy. Like, I just can't run. And he keeps saying, he's like, well, it's because of your weight. He's like, if you went back down to like 170 where you were before, you know, that's where I thought you looked the best, and you were on the field and you're doing this and that. But he doesn't know that version of me at 160, 170 is the version I'm trying to not fix, but I'm trying to make proud. Because that was the version of myself where I was not happy. The version of where I'm at now, I am happy.
Good.
And so I had to explain that to him. Like, well, there's a reason why. Yes, I want to fill out. I want to get big because I've always been underweight. But I'm doing this for that underweight guy. I'm doing it for that guy who was on the field because he wasn't happy. So once I explained to him, he understood. He's like, oh, okay. But it's that why. When I wake up and I'm like, why the hell am I doing this? Eating the same meals every day, going to the gym, literally destroying our bodies and rebuilding. And while we lift, we look at each other like, what the hell are we doing? Who decides, instead of working at a desk, we just want to pick shit up and put it back down and intentionally tear our muscle? Like, it's ridiculous.
This isn't fun.
No,
like I'm gonna be very transparent.
Nothing
about this is fun. Like, we were just in the kitchen talking about how going on carb cycling, and I'm 4 low, 1 high. Like, I'm so tired and so hungry. And so miserable.
I want to say, how long we've been doing the podcast, and this is the first time you've talked? Are you okay?
You know, well, you guys are just vibing. I'm not, I don't want to interrupt. You guys are just vibing. But, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is not fun. Nothing about this is fun.
No.
It's the results that make everything fun, you know. And even with me, like, I just hit my 5 years no alcohol, and I kind of thought about it because people ask all the time, do you miss it? It's like, yeah, of course, but not as much. If it was like a movie or something, like, not as much as I missed this, and then cue in a bunch of clips of me having fun with my friends and feeling good and remembering things the next day. But then I saw something too that was you guys know who Jay Shetty is, right?
I love that guy.
So he had somebody, I think it was he's from a TV show late night, James Corden. And they were like, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? And he was like, it's because he doesn't drink anymore either. James doesn't. And he was like, well, somebody told me about alcohol. Whenever you drink, how much time tomorrow do you want to borrow? Because if you get drunk but then you're hungover, so like, how much of tomorrow are you willing to borrow for like today? And I thought, I mean, I saw that video a few weeks ago and I haven't drank in 5 years, but even just that little thing, it's like, it reaffirms the why sometimes. Sometimes you forget, you know, you have a why. My why for not drinking today, 5 years in, is way different than
it was when
5 years ago. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
different. And so it's the same thing with fitness, you know, like when I first started, I remember I told you, I was like, I just, you know, want to be healthy and take care of myself. 6 months in, I was like, yo, I want a 6-pack, bro. Like, you know, so it just, your why changes all the time. So I think, you know, some people are like, oh, I lost my why. Okay, find a new one.
Yeah, find it.
Yeah.
I
So
had-
you
I
have
had
to
to find a new
constantly
one.
find a new one.
I had to find a new one recently.
So may I ask you a question then? A very personal question. So you're working towards this goal, and it's evolved as you've gone, as you've learned more about your body and the things that are actually mattering to you along the way. When you've hit the goal that you're aiming towards, what is that going to let you do? What does that mean for you?
That's a good question. If we want to, you know, talk deep and not keep it surface level, I had a lot of issues when I was a kid where I didn't really achieve a whole lot. And it wasn't because I couldn't do it. I was just too afraid to try. And even as an adult, I have stuff like that too. Even with like little things like, oh man, like I get more freaked out, really like anxiety, panic attacks, if something is working than if I do if it crashes and
fear of
burns. Because
success.
I am so used to things crashing and burning and failing that's my comfort zone.
Yeah.
So when I try something that works, it freaks. Literally, I will think to myself and have full-on panic attacks like, what if this works? And it freaks me out so bad. Like things like getting a new job, or it's like, what if I, you know, and I'm always worried about changing because I do, like, I finally, 30 years old, like who I am. I don't, you know, I'm not like in love with myself, but I don't hate myself anymore. And so I get really worried sometimes that something will take that away from me, where I'm like, what if I get really jacked and then I'm a jerk, you know, and people don't like me, or I start to hate myself, or I get body dysmorphia, or I develop something that just ruins what I've already worked for. So I have a really hard time with that. Like, I've finally started to like myself, and I'm so protective of that sometimes it's hard. But then also it's like, the other side of that is I've only liked myself because of what I've already done. So it's like a fear of something that's not even real. Like, that's not going to happen because I've already just proven to myself for the past 5 years, I don't hate myself more because I don't drink. Like, things are better. Or even with fitness, I've been with Yo for 2-3 years. Same thing. It's like, I was worried, you know, like, what if I'm like a jerk? Or the big thing for me too is like relationships. What if people, because I'm sure you've witnessed this before, you guys, where it's like all of a sudden they want to be friends with you because you're jacked, not because of like you're a good dude, or they want to be your friend, or they're, you know, maybe they're trying to.
So is it genuine or just because of what I've done?
Poach clients or stuff, you know. And I know, like, you know, some of my friends that are, you know, a little more well known in the music scene, they deal with that all the time, where people, they're like, I thought this person was my friend, and then they were like, can you send my demo to this record company after like a year of fake friendship, you know? And
Here's
so
my mixtape.
Yeah, I get worried about stuff like that too, just because, like, you know, being burned and growing up, you get nervous. Stuff like that. So yeah, I have a huge fear of success. I don't care about I'll fall on my face all day and let people see me. It doesn't embarrass me.
Because we get so used to failing, like you said, that it's easier to navigate when you fail and how to get out of it than it is to navigate when you succeed at something.
Yeah, I'm way better.
If you succeed at it, you're like, well, shit, what do I do now?
Yeah, I'm way better at failing
crash.
and then going back to like neutral than I am failing and like coming out. You know, I'm always good at. I can always get myself back to.
Fear of success is real, and I think it's not a big conversation for a lot of people, because a lot of people always talk about fear of failure, but no one talks about fear
But I think because just saying, oh, I have a fear of succeeding, that just
It sounds dumb. It sounds stupid.
It sounds to people like you're afraid to be successful, you're afraid to like accomplish things. Like, well, it's not that simple.
To reference what you said earlier, you turned 30, and that's a win, right? You didn't die. So it's like, but then how freaked out were you? Like, well, what do I do with the next 60 years of my life?
Yeah.
31.
Like,
31 was the weirdest.
Like how overwhelming is that? That's like the most, like, well, what do I do now?
Well, I mean, that's exactly, it builds off perfectly off of what you've been saying this whole time, and building where you were going is that oftentimes that fear of success is actually the fear of change.
Yeah.
It's the fear of maybe accidentally becoming something that I didn't plan on, or some moral construct in the back of our head that's been drummed into us since a kid that says, you know, if you have too much money, you're going to turn into a bad person. If you get too buff, you're just going to be one of the dumb lunks back in the corner.
Yep.
Right. But the fact is that the more time that I spend with people who consciously go through these processes, what I've discovered is none of these things change you. They make you more of what you already are. So if you are actually
more revealing than it is change.
Exactly. Yeah. It accelerates and it expands what you are capable of doing. And
if you're an asshole, you're gonna be.
Yeah, you're always gonna be.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Like a lot of people that go to the gym and they are meatheads. It's like they kind of were that way, but then it just revealed.
But a lot of times that's an insecurity.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not even like a confidence thing too. Like
no,
because I've learned even lately too that sometimes the most confident people are the people that don't say anything. Because they don't have anything to say because they're so secure in whatever it is that's going on. They don't need to chime in.
Well, they don't have to walk into a room and prove their worth and prove who they
presence,
are. Yeah. They walk in and all they have to do is just be there. Yeah. And they've earned that respect. You've been there before where that
someone walks in and just them being there, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, so overwhelming. I'm sure when people that are pros come to the gym for posing seminars and stuff, when they're there, you're like, dude. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
It's just the way they carry themselves, you know?
Yeah. And that's where, alongside all of this, and it's one of the reasons that I wanted to work with you guys to begin with, was that it was a holistic view. It wasn't just, we're going to get you on a diet plan. And it wasn't just, we're going to put you onto an exercise regimen. It was, let's check in. Let's make sure that your mindset's in the right place. Even a lot of people get nervous about committing to a contract because, that's a lot of money. Well, besides just the financial savings from not being in the hospital all the time, et cetera, if you are willing to put something on the line, something that hurts if you were to lose it, how much more likely are you to actually show up and do the work?
Exactly.
That is, in fact, a feature, not a bug. If you are going with bargain bin gym rat, you may get results, you may not, but they're not motivated to care about your whole self.
No.
And you aren't motivated to care about your whole self because I can just as easily make $100 next week and not worry about it. And that's okay. But if it's time for you to level up, you've got to level up across the board and you've got to put it on the line where it matters.
This might be a dramatic, a little bit of a dramatic comparison, but you think about people like you would consider like heroes or something like that, right? You look at like a firefighter. They don't really get to decide if they go into a burning house or not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of because if they could choose, if all firemen could choose,
I think a lot of them would go.
You wouldn't, but like that's the whole idea. Or same thing too, if you want to be like people that are, bodybuilders that win Mr. Olympia, like C-Bump, they don't choose if they go, they just go. Like they make themselves
they put in the work.
Go, and that's why they have results. You don't got to be like C-Bum or be like a firefighter, but dude, somewhere between where you are now and C-Bum is probably pretty good. I would imagine, somewhere between there.
Yeah. Well, and I have a dear mentor and friend who was the one who actually brought me into the program, Marianne. And she asks a question every once in a while that drives me up the wall, but it doesn't make it less true, which is, if your loved one was in a burning building, would you need to psych yourself up to go in and save them, or would you just go save them? Without question, if you love and care about somebody, you're going to go about it as safely as you can, but you are going to do everything in your power to get them out. They're unconscious on the floor. You are going to find a way to deadlift them, drag them, do whatever is necessary to get out. The reason that I don't like the question is because not everybody has a baby in a burning building.
Nope.
Right? And there are other things that are at stake there. But the core underlying thing is that because you know the why, the answer presents itself. The path becomes less necessary to figure out because it just matters enough to do whatever it takes to get there.
Yep. But I want to go back really quick because you were talking earlier about, if you take the cheap way and pay the gym bro, you might get results. Yeah. And we talk all the time about finding the right coach. And not just finding the right coach, but we have to find the right client. And it's very easy to just go online. You find an online program that's $200 a month, and you just get a PDF of like a food list. Like, stick to these foods and you'll be good. And here's an exercise thing. So you do it and you're like, oh, I'm getting a little bit of result. But again, those results eventually are going to stop. Yeah. But it's with our program, yes, it's a little bit more, but you have to understand we went through the shit that our clients went through. We can't take anyone through a cut if we've never been through a cut ourselves. 100%. We can't take anyone through a health phase if we've never done that. We can't go through a bulk if we've never done that, right? Yeah. But it's yes, you're going to be paying more, but understanding that the program we designed, We design because we went through it.
Yep.
And we wanted to give people something that we wish we would have had back then.
Yeah.
And every step along the way, there have been times where you've pushed me.
Yeah.
Like you really have. But never once has it been a question of whether I was going to survive or whether it was good for me or not.
Yeah.
It was always going to be okay. And even then, on the opposite side of that coin, there have been other days where I've come in and I've still been putting forward every effort that I can. But especially in the early days where we were still trying to get hormones underlined, there were days where it was just like, you need to slow down. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
We're going to take it slightly easier today. We're going to make an adjustment in the meal plan. We're going to add some carbs. Let's go have a cheat day. Let's go do something along the way, because at the end of the day, I'm a real person. I've got a real body. I've got real needs that are going on behind everything else. And so it's not just somebody looking at a screen and saying, and here's the formula. And so the next step is this. It's understanding that, yes, this is the formula. We're going to color inside the lines. But I have felt every step of the way that you have honestly cared.
And thank you for sharing that, because a lot of viewers need to listen and understand, because we're not just a coach that, hey, here's a meal plan, here's your workout program, and good luck. It's actually most of the time, 90% of the time, we're actually a mindset coach. 90% of the time. Actually, the workout, the meal plan is actually, that's the easy part. That's the easy part. Anybody can do that. You can get certified right now and become a personal trainer. It's really not that hard. But can you coach? Can you coach someone through those miserable, negative mindset of a person that's standing in front of you? Okay, how can you turn that negative into a positive? It's not going to take one day. It's not going to take 1 week. It sometimes takes years.
That's only 50% though. They got to be coachable.
You have to be coachable.
You can try to. It's like talking to a brick wall if they're not willing to.
I mean, don't follow blindly and just, when we say trust the process, that doesn't mean you can't ask why or we do this. You can't ask a question.
For sure.
Ask the question to learn, but you have to understand that if you aren't willing to let go of that, if you can't drop your guard, you can't, break down the wall a little bit to let us in to help you. It doesn't matter who you pay or how much you pay, you're not going to progress. You have to be vulnerable.
If you want to be better, which I think everybody across the board, whether they'd use the word healthier or more fit or whatever, that the overall thing is better. Different isn't always better, but better by necessity has to be different. And because these are real bodies that are very complicated, sometimes the first thing you try doesn't work, or it works for a little while and then you got to change something. And that's okay. But you have to be willing to try again and do something different.
Exactly.
A decade ago, I could have given up at that point and just been like, whatever, I'm going to play Halo, eat Hot Pockets, and that's just going to be the end of it.
Did you have that thought process of being in the suicidal?
100%. I've had 2 different suicide attempts, both of which were while I've been married to Tasha.
Both. And she found out.
So, when shortly after we got married, I went and started a board game store. And the whole point and premise of it was to make sure that I was building a business that I could leave something residual coming in for Tasha, even if it wasn't a ton, just something to at least try to help offset the medical side of things. But on top of that, it was important to me that we build a place where the community could come together and feel comfortable and valued and respected as people. And the plan started really well. We bootstrapped the business. I spent way too little getting it started, and we could not keep up with demand. So I had to bring on additional partners just to try to make it work. And it was the first time that I'd ever partnered in a business with somebody, and I gave away too much control. Started having health issues, ended up in the ER one day, and the doctor said, look, you got 2 choices, either take a month off or I'll commit you, your choice. And so I took the time off. And while I was gone, one of the partners started breaking contracts with the community, making a lot of changes internally, some of which were good, some of which were bad, but it effectively started to write me out of the picture. And when I had the sit down conversation with him after I got back and we couldn't really get the thing going again, he just said, I don't think there's a place for you. It would probably be best if you leave. And so I exited that business shortly thereafter. And I felt like I'd let myself down, like I'd let my wife down, like I'd let the community down. And especially, again, at that point in that frame mindset that I was in, there was not enough time to rebuild something new and figure it out. And it was harsh. And the first time I ended up spooking myself away. And then a couple of weeks later, I just decided that was that. And as I sat there on the bed with a bottle of pills in my hand, Tasha called me and just said, "Hey, are you doing okay? Like, I had a feeling something's off. I just want to check in on you." I just told her no. And she said, "I'm leaving work," and came down and picked me up. I spent a couple of weeks in the hospital in recovery, in a psych ward, and spending time with people there. I learned a lot of really valuable lessons and things that I brought back into the real world. But on the opposite side of that, I realized that my why needed to be bigger, and that sitting in that space of believing that it was hopeless and that everything was set to the way that it was in fact killing me faster. And there is always a choice. And that's become one of my life missions and goals, is to lower the global suicide rate by raising awareness and helping people learn how to make choices.
Yep.
Because as I've talked with people on the edge, some of whom I've been able to help, some of whom I've not, the consistent thing across the board is they feel like there's no choice.
Yep.
This is just the way that it is.
Yep.
And I hear the same thing much earlier in the process. It's just my genetics. Well, it's just the way that I was raised. Well, I'm lower class. Like, there's nothing I can do. The fact is that your effort is always your choice.
Exactly.
Always. And there have been days where the only effort that I could put in would be to get up and take a shower. But if that was all that I could do that day, I chose to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then a couple of days later, I got a little more energy. Now I'm going to take a shower and I'm going to go for a walk. Okay. Something goes down. I'm back to, okay, I am just going to sit here in bed and sleep today. But it's my choice, not because anybody else is telling me I have to, because I want it for myself.
But you did those little things, and then you found your own way to celebrate it. And that's, I think, something people get lost in, is they don't celebrate the little wins. And so doing that, you're like, you know what? All I could do today was take a shower, but I did it. Perfect.
I was going to chime in on that too, being sober and not drinking. In the beginning, dude, it was like, I just got to be sober until tonight.
Yeah.
Like just
get through tonight, and then we'll worry about tomorrow.
And then tomorrow, and then it would be, wake up the next day, like just till tonight. Because I remember thinking like, I'd be like a weekend or something. I was like, this is so hard. How am I supposed to do this for the rest of my life? Like that was so overwhelming. And it was like, well, I might as well not even try. Yeah. And then it was like, well, maybe just till tonight. Like if I can just make it until tonight. And now it's gotten to the point where being 5 years in, that's such like, not like an achievement for me, but I would be so angry at myself if I made it 5 years, which is like 1,800 and something days, and I didn't even think I could make it one, and I made it 1,800 and some days. Like I'd be so mad if I just like tossed that all away for a drink.
I want to go back to that phone call.
Okay.
And this is something that I want to really, really discuss, because that if it wasn't for that phone call, things would have changed dramatically. Yeah. And the reason why I want to bring that up, because we know there's people in our lives right now, and all they needed was that phone call. That's all they needed. It's hard for me not to be emotional about it, because that's all they needed. You know what I mean? Yeah. And Nik knows what I'm talking about, because I know his situation. And so sometimes you think you're going through some shit, but you have that one person, maybe two, maybe three, that you can call, that you can pick up, that you can message, they can show up.
Yeah.
There's people out there that need that phone call. You know
100%. And if you have,
Nik is having a moment right now, but I know it's hard for him. But I'm just saying though, you know what I mean? Like there's people out there that need that phone call. So if you're listening to this right now and you know someone is having a bad day, having a hard time, and they tell you they're fine, but they're not, man. Mm-hmm. We've talked about this last couple episode where it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
You got to speak up, but sometimes that person won't.
Oh yeah. In the days and weeks following me exiting that business, like Tasha knew that I was upset, but I didn't tell her everything that was going on inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for me and my path and what I ultimately need to do, that has been a benefit because now I understand what it's like for somebody to be in that position. Mm-hmm. But especially if you are feeling that way about anything, even if you think it is the stupidest thing in the world, emotions are not logical to begin with. It is okay for them to not make sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there are, I guarantee you, more people that are willing to help you than you think. At the same time, if you know somebody who is struggling, understand the demon that they face can only be fought by them. Mm-hmm. But you can stand next to them.
Yep.
Just be there. Let them catch their breath until they realize that demon was imaginary to begin with.
Hey, I can't fight this for you, but I'll be in your corner.
Exactly.
I want to share really quick why I was getting so emotional when we were talking about that. So my previous job, I worked for Netflix, and I was in management, and I was there. There used to be a customer service site here in Salt Lake, and I was there pretty much from when it opened, and I was there till the day it closed. And I got to know a lot of people, but I became friends with this guy, Brian. Mm-hmm. And we clicked really easily because of our love for music, right? I'm a huge metalhead. He was too, so we would share music back and forth. But the more I got to know him, he told me about his depression and how bad it was and how he had pretty much taken every antidepressant pill that's on the market that they can legally give him. And it got to the point where I had to get him short-term medical leave so he could go check into the University of Utah into a psych ward where he was getting pretty much his brain shocked. He was getting electrotherapy and all to try to see if they could get the prefrontal cortex to fire. Because like maybe there's neurons that aren't connected and that's what's causing it. And there were times where he would call me and it'd be in the middle of the night and he would tell me he wanted to attempt. So I would talk him out of it. And there was one time he was drunk and he was walking down the street and called me and he was telling me about what he was wanting to do. And I was able, and I felt bad and he was mad at me for a while, but then he eventually apologized. I tricked him into telling me where he was. And I grabbed my dad's phone and called the police and had the police go find him. And I was on the phone when the police found him. And when they did find him, and just to give everyone exactly what he said, when the police found him, he said, "I thought you were my friend, but now I realize you're just a fucking piece of shit, and you don't care about me," and he hung up. And I was like, well, he's angry, he's drunk, he's trying to get his stuff figured out. I eventually apologized and was thankful that I did that. But one of the reasons why I got into all this, and I'm going to fucking cry.
It's okay.
Is because, like we would look in the mirror, we're not happy with ourselves, and the suicide attempts are tough and all that, and I got into this because I hated how I looked and I didn't want to go through that. But there was one night, and I just realized it's coming up next week, that it'll be, oh God, it's 2019, so what, 5 years. He called me and I missed the phone call. And it was like 4 a.m. And then I wake up to the phone ringing again and I missed it as I was about to answer. So I texted him and said, hey, it's late. If you need something, give me a call back. But let's chat tomorrow and let's see if we can, what we can do to get you more medical leave, because I knew why he was calling me. Mm-hmm. And as I send the text, I get a voicemail from him. And so I listened to it, and it's his mom. And she said, hey, this is Brian's mom. Can you give me a call? So I called his phone back, and she said she got home from work, and he had his music on, as he always, had. When he would have a rough time, he would just, in the middle of the night, he would just blast his music. And his family knew that was his way to just release his emotions. Mm-hmm. And she went to go turn it off like she did every night and get him into bed. And she opened the door and it wouldn't budge. And she finally got it open. And unfortunately, Brian had hung himself and he had passed away. And that's something that I still struggle with now, is that I missed his phone call. And so I got into this because I don't want anyone to ever have to feel like that. I don't want anyone to ever have to look at themselves in the mirror and hate who they are or have these thoughts or struggle with these things. And I know nutrition and exercise and the stuff we do isn't like going to completely remove suicide, you know, and all that. But you know just as well as I do, and Colton and Young could probably relate to it too, is the second we started focusing on our health, we got our blood work done, we started prioritizing ourselves, we could start to cope and we could move forward. And that's the one thing that I wish I would have known while Brian was still here, is that we could have gotten his blood work done. And maybe, you know, he could have, I talked to him about coming to the gym with me, but it never happened. And I wish more than anything that I had more time and I had the chance to go back in time and say, let's try this. And so I do everything I do now for him and to try to make him proud that, you know, I'm going to do what I can to make sure no one has to feel what he felt. And that, you know, I still, to be honest, struggle with the guilt of missing his phone call. And I know there's nothing I could have done. When the time comes and they're going to do it. But that's something that I'm going to carry for the rest of my life. And I'm going to do everything I can to make him proud.
He made that choice. But the beauty in the choice that he made is that you now have every additional motivation to provide any tool, any support, anything necessary. And while that life is being gone is absolutely a tragedy, good on you for giving enough of a shit, not only about him, but about anybody else who's in that position.
No one should feel like this, you know, and we've talked about it before with mental health, but especially for men, that's something that's not talked about enough. And we see professional athletes all the time bring it up in press conferences or after a UFC fight or whatever, they're talking about how they've struggled with things, and no one talks about men's mental health and asks if they're okay and this and that. And it's something that needs to be talked about more, and it's something that, you know, men need to feel comfortable with talking about, and this old school mindset of men can't talk about their feelings has got to go. We've got to talk about it. You know, we've got to figure out just a way to just tell people, like, it's okay to cry. I'm crying in front of my friends and on a podcast people are going to listen to, and, you know, it's hard to think about, but if we don't talk about it and we hold on to these feelings, that 17,000 by the 7th is eventually going to turn into 24,000. It's going to turn into 50,000. My need and want to make sure that my wife and my family have everything they need has substantially grown. And I didn't think this was possible to feel this way or like find this kind of motivation and all that. But, like, you know, that why always changes. And now with that coming, it's like, well, shit, I don't have a choice. Like, if I don't do it, they're not going to have what they need.
So then can I provide a tool for everybody on this then? So
Sure,
we come to a very low place.
God, this is...
It's okay.
It's good.
Okay.
This
is
good.
Humanity. Like,
Yeah.
this is, and the fact is, even along the journey that each of us has been taking, there are still low days. Don't joke, you know, don't forget that for a second. But there's an interesting relationship in the science of overwhelm that is not intuitive, which is that oftentimes the solution when you are feeling overwhelmed may actually be to add more to your plate. That does not necessarily mean add more goals, add more things that you have to do, but
add the
rather
right thing to the plate.
Add intentionality to what's going on.
Yeah.
So one of the exercises that I've started doing with people, and I'm building a handout for it. If I can get it in time, I'll get it to you guys to hand
absolutely.
out. Is get 2 pieces of paper, right? I'm feeling overwhelmed in this moment. I'm going to write down every single thing that's overwhelming me. And it's going to go on one of those 2 sheets. On one of them, this is something that's inside my control. And just do it in a big straight column. On the other, here's everything that's outside of my control. Do it in a big straight column. For everything that is in your control, next to it, write one thing, the next action item that you need to take to overcome that thing that's overwhelming you. Because it's in your control, you can do something about it. Don't plan 30, 40, 50 things down the line. One thing, put it on each of those. On the side of things that are outside of your control, you got 3 choices for each of those. Either you need to change the objective, you need to change your mindset, or you need to try to let it go. And I'm going to write down which it is. If I'm changing the objective that I'm aiming towards, I'm writing the new objective next to it. Now, every time that I feel that overwhelm and I come back to that sheet, I find that item on it and I look right next to it and I go, oh, right, that's what I'm focusing on instead. The second is changing your mindset, which is this thing is a challenge for me. why is it a challenge? I'm going to write, okay, here's how I want to view this challenge instead. Same thing. Every time that comes up, I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the instruction right next to it. I'm saying, okay, this is what this is doing for me. Then the third one is if I need to let it go, I write out, okay, let it go.
Yeah.
Every time that I come back, if I find one of those items, I put a star next to it. And if I get 3 stars, I know that there's an underlying deeper belief that has to be addressed first, because that thing is not actually the thing that's stressing me out. It's just the trigger that's telling me there's a problem. There's something else that's got to happen.
I like that.
Alongside that, your goal is to get more things onto the list that are in your control. Every time you cross something off, you're going to replace it with something new. And ideally, things that are on the outside of control eventually come into your control. You can cross them off and move them over to there, right? And as that list gets bigger, you'll find that your overwhelm comes down, because overwhelm is not actually about how much is on your plate.
Yeah.
It's about the ratio of things that you're concerned about that are outside of your control versus the things that you're actively working towards. So as you change that ratio, even if the number of things outside of your control doesn't come down, if you increase the number of things that are in your control, that overwhelm goes away. It's why you see the top performers in the world pack 15-hour days, because they have learned, either instinctively or consciously, that there are so many things that are outside of their control that are worthless for them to try to focus on. So they are just going to put every ounce of energy that they have into what they can. And that means more wins. It means more opportunities. It means more people who want to be around you, who want to help you achieve the goals that you're going towards. And internally, you can look at that list physically, mentally, emotionally, and know I am doing everything in my power, and the number of choices that I have in my life way outclasses the number of things that I have no choice in.
Exactly. I like that.
And I love that. What you've been trying to preach and applied. And obviously it works for you. So if people are listening to this right now, apply that. And honestly, I think step 1 is just to speak up, really. Right?
Yeah.
And pick up the phone call when someone calls, or take the phone, or call someone that are really needing help. So back to the phone call thing. It's really important. And sometimes I love doing that, by the way. So on someone's birthday or something, I call. I don't typically text you unless you're further out of that friendship away from me, more of acquaintance level. I'll text you, but a lot of times we call. I call, and it's been great. So shortly after, let's go back to after you had the suicide thoughts. Shortly after that, you reached out to me, actually.
Yeah. So
right?
Well, so
because you just
the
quit
attempt
your.
that put me into the hospital was in 2018.
Okay.
Yeah. But I eventually ended up opening another game store that I also left during the pandemic. I took on a couple of other jobs along the way that really helped me grow as a person. But May of last year, I was feeling a lot of that overwhelm again. I was working as a director of operations for a manufacturing company, and I had helped them make it through the pandemic at the same time that I was trying to run my own business, and it was a lot. I'd had the conversation with my boss, who was the owner of the company at the time, that I'd planned on being with him for another 2 years, did some soul searching, realized that I actually needed to quit, and the next week walked in and submitted my notice. But coming out of that, I said, okay, I need to get myself into alignment across the board. And especially as I'd now owned my journey and needing to be able to save lives, I wanted to make sure that I look like somebody who is put together. I look like somebody who knows what they're doing. And if I have to physically remove somebody from a scenario, I need to have the strength to be able to do it. And so that was when I reached out to you. Keep in mind, at this point, guys, I was jobless. Okay. And we leveraged the last of our available credit at that point to make it happen, because it was
for you and Tasha.
It was that important. And there is no better investment that I could have made.
Well, a while ago at the office, I asked you this question, but I want to ask it here so you can elaborate on it more. I remember you came in and we were talking about the progress that you and Tasha had made, and I brought up, throughout the last decade, you've been on God knows how many medications. You've gone through all these different cocktails and these different treatments and things to try to get you to where you wanted to be and essentially get you to where you are today. And none of them seem to work. And then something as simple as changing your eating habit, exercising, and addressing blood work through hormonal imbalance and androgen issues. And now you've become like it's night and day from when you walked into our office. I remember that 100%. Day crystal clear. You know, it's night and day difference. And it was something that simple. Does that, and again, I want to bring it up, does that almost make you angry that it was that simple? Or is there a sense of relief of like, yeah, it was that simple, but thank God I tried the other things first, because without those, I wouldn't have gotten here?
A little bit of both, but actually more of a nuance than that.
Okay.
I am grateful that I went through the journey that I went through, because it taught me a lot of other things.
Yeah.
You know, I was on a crap ton of different antidepressants and different things along the way, a lot of different therapies, and a lot of those therapies along the way helped me to train my mind and to view the world differently. And especially as medicine after medicine after medicine after medicine didn't work, eventually the system that I came up with was functionally a choice of self-delusion.
Yeah.
I called it putting on a different color glasses so that I could see the world in a slightly different way. I don't feel like it. I don't feel like somebody's being honest with me on the opposite side of this conversation. I don't feel like somebody cares about me on the opposite side of this conversation, but logically it's the only reasonable solution. So I am just going to choose to act that way.
Yeah.
I still did not have the chemistry set in here necessary to actually feel it and be the best self, but it at least made it easier so that at the point at which, okay, we're now solving the chemistry problem and it really just comes down to the effort, it made it a lot easier to adapt and adjust to things. Now, in terms of whether it made me angry or not, it is very easy to be angry at doctors who don't get a diagnosis right.
Yeah.
But have you ever considered how fucking complicated the human body actually is?
Yeah.
Do you realize how many hundreds of people are in charge of maintaining a rocket ship? The human body is more complicated than that.
100%.
And yet a lot of the times we go to a singular person who does a singular test and expect an outcome. And especially in the United States, we love silver bullet solutions where it's just one thing that makes it all easy.
Yep.
The fact
minimal
is,
effort to achieve the result.
and it's okay to want to put in minimal effort. It's okay to want to put in intelligent effort.
Yeah.
But the reality is that for most of us, our problems are a little bit more complicated. And I am very confused because I went through my 15 years of blood work because I tried to keep as many records as I could once I realized that doctors were not doing a good job of passing information to each other. In all of that time, nobody checked my testosterone.
Nope.
I have had blood tests for just about everything on the planet, but somehow that never got checked.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that was anybody being willingly negligent or trying to, keep me in the system or anything like that. I have a different opinion about the pharmaceutical industry, but those aren't
That's a whole other
doctors.
episode. we're gonna go over,
Yeah.
But those aren't the doctors who actually looked me in the eye and honestly tried to help.
Yeah.
Right. And so that is okay that they didn't get it right, but they added additional context to the puzzle all along the way so that at the point at which a solution was reasonably going to be found, I was already in a place of like, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I have no faith that it's going to work. I even told you that early on, and I bawled to Tasha when we'd sent away for the blood work and we're waiting for the results. And I'm just like, if this is it, I can't put all of my stock into this. I've already been told so many times that this should help, and it helps for a little while, and then it doesn't make a long-term change. So I'm just going to do everything that I can, and if it works, it works.
So did you have that same, I guess, attitude, if you will, when we got the results back and we're like, your testosterone's low?
100%.
We need to treat it. So you have that same, like,
what
well,
were
okay,
your
I'll try it, but...
What were your levels, by the way?
It was,
In the 200s, I remember.
yeah, it was low 200. I
Yeah.
think it was 208.
Yeah, mine came back at like 306 or something like that
Yeah.
too. And I
So-
went, got my levels checked, and I was like, hey, I want my testosterone checked. And he came back into the office and said, how is it? And he said, it's good. And I said, well, like, can you tell me what the number is? And he, my doctor said, that's none of your business. And I was
Excuse
like,
me?
Like, oh, it is.
what do you mean? He goes,
Yeah.
even if you were, he was like, I'm not going to put you on
Yeah.
anything.
And we
I
run
was
into that
just
all
like,
the time, though.
By
yeah,
the
so
way,
then I go see another doctor, and he's like, well, medically, like, technically, you are in the green, but, like, barely. Like, you barely
Yes.
qualify as in the green, like, good to go,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you're not optimal,
Yeah.
and wouldn't you want to be optimal? And I was like,
Well, check, I have barely enough gas to get to work, but don't you think I should put some more gas in there to make sure I still
that's
get
like,
there?
yeah, the same
like,
thing.
it's the same thing.
I couldn't believe that. He literally looked at me and said it was none of my business. And I was like,
Yeah.
it's,
Well, we
those
get
are
that
my
all the time.
fluids. Like, what do you
so
mean?
that's a doctor I would be angry at.
Yeah, it's
Don't get me
only-
wrong.
Like
Yeah.
my client Heather, and I know she's going to listen to this and she's going to laugh that I'm bringing this up, but she wanted to get blood work done for her husband. So they went to the doctor, and I made sure to check his testosterone because I guarantee it's
I
low.
remember this.
And she told the doctor, we want to get Serge's testosterone checked. And the doctor looked him straight in the eye and said, unless he can't get a boner, you don't need to know your testosterone levels.
So
I'm like, well, what does that even mean? Like, if he was having a libido issue to that extent, ED issue, that's something beyond just getting
Yeah.
testosterone checked. That might be a mindset thing, an
that
estrogen
could be a
thing,
mental
right?
thing too.
I remember a conversation with one of my doctors when we were talking about, okay, could this be a hormonal issue? And he asked me outright, do you have a sex life? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, I see
it's
that
not.
you're going facial hair. I see that you have a sex life, so it's not a testosterone issue. And to be clear, if
That's
any of you out there
irrelevant.
are sexually active, you love sex, but you're struggling to build muscle,
For any guy out there, or even for women, because I have women who they want to get their hormones checked, and the doctor says, no, you don't need to know your estrogen. You don't need to know your estradiol. It's like, yes, we do. We need to know those things. If the doctor says no, there are, especially for men, there are male health clinics that will check
or
this.
I go see a urologist.
Yes, or a urologist will check it
Like
as well.
someone who is specialized,
Yeah.
like
Correct.
you go see a gynecologist and a urologist, dude.
Yep.
Like I switched to a urologist, and I went in there and I was like, this is without question too. I was like, I think I should be on testosterone. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is how I feel. Just me even telling him how I
They're
feel.
like,
He's like, I
let's
already
check
know
it.
you're a candidate. Let's go get your blood work done.
So
Go
if
downstairs, get my-
you're in Utah and you need help, reach out to us. We'll help you
Yeah.
find a clinic. We have clinics we can refer you to check it. If you're out of the state, still let us know and we'll see what we can do to help. But if a doctor says you don't need to know your hormone levels, get the fuck out of that office.
Yeah. And by the way, two things on a very similar note. First, your medical records are legally yours to keep. You are allowed to know your test results.
Yes.
So if a doctor is refusing to give you the actual data, you need to request it from their clinic, their office, their overarching provider. If you're working with an individualized doctor, then you need to contact your malpractice board, because you have a right to know your medical information.
Exactly.
It is a huge deal to me.
Well, I think all that's protected under HIPAA. Like,
Well, so HIPAA specifically covers the way that medical records can be transferred.
Yeah.
But you as an individual have the right to hold them. But then on the second point, when we're talking about testosterone ranges, I'm sure that you've beat this drum before, but the technical reference range is either between 350 and 850 or 300 and 850. But guess what? That's supposed to cover 60 years worth
Yes.
of men. And I guarantee you, if you are 30, you are not a 65-year-old testosterone level. And even then, individual body structures, your individual chemistry, your diet, your exercise, how you are expending testosterone.
It's not singular. It's not uniform.
Yeah.
Everyone's different.
400
but,
may be
but all
okay,
these
but it
ranges
might
on blood
not.
panels are based off a demographic of sick people.
Yeah.
So why the hell are we looking at sick people results and taking the average? Let's look at the healthy ones, the ones who come in who are like us, who are healthy and focus on our health, and that's the reference range we're going to go after. You know, why is there such a weird stigma around testosterone? Why is there such a weird stigma around like what it is that we do?
Yeah.
Right? Like it's we're never going to be out of a job, thank God, but it's
Not in America.
not in America, no, but it's just so frustrating that something as simple as a hormone imbalance, an androgen receptor issue.
Yeah.
It takes, we're not doctors and we don't claim to know more than doctors, but sometimes I'm like, I swear to God, maybe I kind of do. You know, a little bit more than this nurse practitioner or whomever. No disrespect, but it's
They're expected to memorize an operations
Yeah.
manual on a machine that is so complicated no single person could know it.
Exactly. Exactly. But I want to get to the point where one day doctors and all that, instead of sending a prescription to the pharmacy for a drug or for some stupid ass thing like that, they write it to the insurance to cover what we do. And then we work with the doctors, and this is option one. Not these goddamn pills that the cute blonde bimbo with her boobs hanging out is going to sell the doctor so they can make money. Right, and the doctor gets incentive, or the hospital gets incentive if they prescribe X amount of pills for within the month, and they reach their quota. Then the whole hospital gets money. They're more focused on the overall health, the holistic approach of let's look at your blood work, let's go find a nutritionist, and let's work with them, and then see what we need to do.
That's part of the reason that I became cash pay.
Yeah,
because it hit a point where we were trying to figure all this stuff out, and insurance sometimes got in the way. There were other times where doctors were just simply unwilling to do it because insurance was so cumbersome to try to get anything processed. And so I was like, okay, well, I did the math. And even with the medical expenses that I was experiencing, I had more options as a cash patient. So consider that as an option too. If they're like, well, your insurance won't cover this, ask them what the cash rate is.
My insurance won't cover my testosterone. They sent a letter to us saying that they are going to deny it because they need more proof. One, they the proof that they need is a letter from the doctor who's prescribing it saying that this individual needs to be on this medication. But even then, they might not approve it. All right. But they can't request your blood panels. And who the hell is the insurance to say, Alton's fine. He doesn't need to be on testosterone. He falls within the range. You don't know what you don't know. Exactly. And the reason why you fall into normal range now is because of the damn medicine.
And they also still use what we call it the BMI, body mass index, which is the most inaccurate thing I've ever seen.
I'm considered obese according to the BMI.
Me too. And so is Colton. And it's get to the point where we're like, no, we do not look at that. But back to summarizing everything, right? So you've gotten to the point where, we got a little bit of time now. So we got to the point where you explain everything else up until you met me. And then you and Tasha, which is your wife, start the program, completely change your life. And by the way, Tasha is going to be on a podcast here soon once she's done cutting.
You guys are going to love her. Make sure to tune back in.
Yes. And she's down officially 70 pounds as of today. I'm pretty sure we're going to drop more. So doing it with Tosh, how is it changed from before you started our program to now? Like, what is that like? And what are the advice that you have for the people that are listening?
A few different things. First off, working with somebody else, whether that is a wife, a partner, a girlfriend, boyfriend, or just a work friend or whatever, is going to make your job easier. Because you're with somebody else who also has to go, especially if you're carpooling together or anything like that. There is now a double incentive to make sure that you always show up. So do that across the board. With Tasha and I specifically, part of the reason that I got as big as I did was because of her family's diet. The majority of her family, in fact, are overweight or have struggled with weight issues across the entirety of her lifetime.
I'm sure their eating habits are not the greatest.
And so even though we had tried to lose weight in the past, utilizing keto and other diets and things like that, inevitably it would always slide back. And we were all relying upon information that the family had passed amongst itself, none of whom were getting the results.
What did we talk about before Alan got here? What's that word? Environment.
Oh, environment. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And wasn't it Tasha that said that she was diabetic or she was insulin resistant, right?
Yeah, she was told that she was insulin resistant and pre-diabetic. Yeah. And that it was genetic in her family and there was nothing she could do about it. But the fact is that in order for either of us to achieve the results, since we're living together, like if you're in a situation where you're the only person who can get onto a meal plan or whatever, do it. That is better than nothing. But being able to work on it together made it a lot easier. We both knew what each other's plans were. We've both printed each other's meal plans so that if either of us needs to cook or prep or whatever, we've got what we need. We both know each other's exercise routines. We coordinate them together when and how we can. Even at this point where I'm now bulking and she is at the lowest point of her cut, it has made it, in fact, easier for her because she watches me pound after pound of food and carbs and everything else. And then she goes into the workplace and sees, a coworker who is morbidly obese snacking on a Snickers bar and does not feel the craving because she sees the side by side. Right. Alongside that talking specifically about diet and what had to change for me and her for that matter. There's a branding issue, a misunderstanding around what a caloric deficit actually means. We talked a little about this morning, which is that people hear the words caloric deficit and they say, oh, okay, I just need to eat less. Yes, kind of, and no. It, as a perfect example, She kept gaining weight. She was now bigger than I was and wanted to desperately get that weight down. We'd been working for months before we came to you to just get something moving. Well, I said, you know what? I'm pudgy. I'm not where I want to be either. So I'll match her diet. And there were days where I was like 800 calories, right?
Holy cow.
And yet somehow I kept getting fatter.
That's
and
one
fatter
meal
and
for
fatter.
us.
Yeah, that's like one meal.
That's one meal.
That's why I looked at my
It's one
thinking in
meal
my
now.
head. I'm like, holy shit, is that my breakfast?
Yeah, I was literally just thinking that too. I was like 800 calories. I was like, I could eat that in one meal, and as soon as I'm done, I'm like, God, I'm hungry.
Yeah. Well, but that was because we were in that mindset of, okay, the math is simple. It's just a caloric deficit.
Yep.
Kind of. Yes, you need to be consuming less energy than you're expending, which means that you need to be expending more than you're eating.
Yep. Well, the magic number that gets thrown around is 500. Like, oh, you just, find what your maintenance is and subtract 500. And that's
That's a
what
lot, dude. 500 is a lot.
It's a lot, but that's not how it works, though, right?
Because a percentage of what we're eating.
Yeah.
It's
If
huge.
just sitting here, you're burning 1,800, but then exercising, you're burning more. You're burning 3,000.
Yeah.
Eating 800 calories or 2,500 calories might not be enough for your body, right? And there's a hormone called leptin that controls body mass and body weight. And after a certain point, whether you're growing or you're cutting or you're eating or you're not eating, leptin kicks in and says, I have to maintain my body mass. I have to maintain body weight. So if you're only eating 800 calories, you might start gaining weight because the leptin is telling
because it'll store food. It'll say, I don't know when we're going to get food again.
It
so
goes
it'll
into a
start to
panic
store
mode.
fat.
So leptin says, I don't know when we're going to get food again. I need to hold on to this. I need to maintain weight. I need to maintain this because the body isn't doing good. Oh, Alton's eating every 2 to 3 hours now consistently. I know, like you train it. Like you almost train a dog, to after it goes to the bathroom to, they come in, they sit, they get a treat kind of deal. You train your body to recognize, oh shit, I'm getting food.
And you'll
every
start
2
to
to 3
shrink
hours
because
I'm
it'll start to
eating.
eat all that fat and use it for fuel.
Yes. So the body recognizes I'm getting enough food. I can go and rebuild muscle tissue. I can take this to the organs and make sure they're working. The brain needs 70%. The brain's getting that now. I'm exercising. I'm eating enough food that I can sacrifice 600-700 calories. I need, that's the deficit. But you get less calories through fat. So now that you've closed that deficit enough to where it doesn't need to pull from muscle tissue, it's going to get rid of fat. So we say the more you eat, the more you lose. And it's that exact thing right there.
Quality, quantity, frequency.
Yeah.
You control all three of those things to actually put yourself into a healthy deficit. And so, day one, Yo's like, hey, so what are you eating? And I'm like, okay, well, here's what we're doing. And I watched as he went, and he goes, well, we're going to start by increasing your calories. And I think the first day it was literally only up to like 1,800 or something. He's like, are you okay with this? I'm like, I get to eat all this food.
Yeah.
I start pounding that sucker. Even before we solved the testosterone issue a month and a half later, I'm losing weight. I'm feeling good. My energy's up. I'm happy.
But was it like how that, this doesn't seem right. We feed you more and you start losing? Because we get people all the time like, oh, I wish I could just eat more food and lose weight. Like, I just want to eat everything I can. It's like, well,
Tasha's
technically,
family.
that's how it works. The metabolism does not slow down until you're in your early 60s. And I can provide plenty of goddamn studies to show this, and I'm not just pulling a number out of my ass.
So Tasha's
But it's
family
the eating
freaked
habits.
out.
Yeah.
Because we'd go over and we'd be eating rice and beans and tortillas. And they're like, should you be having that? Like, you're going to get so fat. And
I'm
then
not.
3 weeks later, Tasha's down 15 pounds or whatever. Something insane in that beginning. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're looking really good. Should you be eating that? Like, you're going to lose all your progress.
Like, this is what I've been eating to lose the weight.
Yeah. And then they're watching. And one day we go to a family dinner, right? And they cooked chicken and rice and things like that, knowing that that's what we could have. And we all go to the table and everybody has their little, plastic plate or whatever. And we brought the scale. So I weighed out all my stuff and I have this mound of food sitting on my plate as I'm sitting at the table, pounding it in front of everybody else. While we have one family member who's getting onto whatever it is, the shot, the
Semaglutide.
semaglutide.
That's another topic. That's another topic.
And then other members of the family who are like going in to get an ablation on their spine because they're so overweight that it's getting compressed, all these other things. And meanwhile, I'm just sitting there pounding
Shoveling
food.
food.
Yeah.
Defining science.
Well, I get excited knowing I'm like, if I eat this pizza, I'm going to lose weight tomorrow. And it makes me so happy. And it's the dumbest thing because
it makes me angry. I remember like one of the first times I ever cut, I think you had me no cheat meals for like 3 months. Yep. And then he finally was like, all right, cool, go get a cheat meal. And he was like, I want you to go get 2 double doubles, two fries, and a chocolate shake. And I remember being like, oh, sweet baby Jesus. I ate all of it, and the next day I woke up way more lean, and I was just like, how?
When Johan was coaching me, one of the last cheat meals he gave me, I remember it was a Tuesday because I had soccer that night, and Johan, we always plan my cheat meals for Tuesday, so I had 7 whole meals instead of 6, because if I even at 6, I was going to lose weight. And he's like, I want you to get an extra large pizza and eat as much of it as you can. I was like, fucking okay, like cool. So I ordered an extra large pepperoni pizza. I literally folded it into a cake, and I just used fork and knife, and I cut it, and I ate it. I ate the whole thing. I took a nap for like 2 hours, woke up, I ate again, went to soccer, came home, had my 7th meal, went to bed. I wake up the next day, weighed myself. I shit you not, I lost 5 pounds. It's like, how the fuck? So I text him like, bro, what
I'm
just happened?
screaming at this point. I'm like, bro, and my body is so different.
Yeah.
Every one of us is so different. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I will gain 5 pounds. I know that.
But I lost weight. I'm like, so do I need to eat another pizza? Do I need to eat 8 meals just to maintain my weight? Like, what the hell?
And this is exactly why you work with a coach who's looking at it holistically and not just slapping it. One of the early things that you said that has stuck with me, that I've said to so many people past this point: if your diet has a name, it wasn't made for you.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that you're not going to see some kind of result. But if you have the opportunity to work with somebody who knows what they're doing, who's looking at your blood work, who's looking at the whole picture, your exercise plan, everything else that's going in, you're going to see the results.
But a diet it's restrictive. I mean, we said, hey, no, for the first 3 weeks, only eat the meal plan, right? This and that. But have you at any point felt like you're on a diet? Was it a diet eating street tacos for dinner every night? Was it a diet eating a breakfast burrito?
No.
This and that.
Even in my cuts, I was eating a pound of food for one of my 6 meals every single day.
Yep.
Right? And like, don't get me wrong, when I was at the bottom of the cut, it was still hard because we were specifically getting the body to burn more fat. That was the goal. We were at that last stage, and it was time to push just a little bit harder. But on the opposite side of that, I know, first off, if it gets too bad, Yo's going to notice. We're going to do something about it. And yeah, when we finally got to that point where it was like, dude, I am pissy every single day, and I'm usually a pretty happy guy. This is not cutting it. I'm not recovering. It's taking me 5 days.
Oh my God.
Then it was like, okay, well, go have a cheat meal. Let's this weekend, let's space out a little bit. Let's see how your body reacts. Body reacts well. Okay, yep, it's time. Let's start to move back up.
Yep.
So and everybody's going to push, but to your point, it's not a restriction thing. It's a choice thing.
Yep.
Let's choose the things that are actually going to give your body the nutrients and the results that it needs to achieve the outcome that you want. Because not everybody is here to build huge pecs and glutes, and some of us are just here to look like a reasonably dressed person who could easily walk into a Hollister anytime they want.
But just take it.
That's your goal?
No.
That's why.
Those are good ones.
Rumors.
Hollister.
But it's we need to give the body what it needs in order to operate, right? Like, you're not going to go on a road trip across the country without an oil change, a tire rotation, new brake pads. If you have a timing belt issue, you're not going to take the car. You're going to go get it fixed before you do that. So that's essentially what we're doing. We're not saying you can't ever go on the road trip. Hey, get the car fixed first, make sure it's good, and then when you get the okay, then go. So that's all we do. We say, hey, for now, no McDonald's, no Chick-fil-A, no whatever, until the body can handle it.
Exactly.
Once it handles it, then yes, we're gonna let you. We're gonna let
Not
you
even
have
that
it.
though. Like dude, I remember when I
just
first
build consistency.
When I first started, and I was eating chicken and rice, and then there was one day at work where I just didn't have time to make food. Like, and I was like, I gotta eat something. So I went across the street and got Chick-fil-A. I was so sick.
Yep.
Yeah.
So sick. And
You go back to eating these foods, you're like, how the hell did I do this every day?
And it was so hard on my stomach, and it made me nauseous, and it just blew me away because I was like, I used to eat Chick-fil-A like twice, 2-3 times a week. Because we had a bunch of restaurants by the dealership when I worked there. That's when I started with Yo. And then it was like, I was so sick, and there was like that moment of like, I don't even want to eat here anymore. Like,
No, when we get clients,
wanna go eat my
we
chicken
tell them
and
like, hey,
rice.
yeah, go get your cheat meal finally. And they get excited, they get that thing they used to have, and it makes them sick. Or I've had clients who are like, honestly, I'm thinking about what I want, and nothing sounds good. Like, can I just have more chicken and rice?
So the moral of the story, ladies and gentlemen, deficit, it's not always the answer.
People are so
1
focused on
pound.
fat loss, but you don't realize how inflamed you are, how bloated you are.
When we got to the bottom of the cut, I weighed in at 198 was the lowest that I got. And then it was like, okay, it's time to bulk. I'm currently weighing in at 205, but my muscle has gone up. My waistline has gone down. I'm fitting into clothes that I didn't fit into at the bottom of my cut. My inflammation is better. My pain usually is lower. Some exceptions this week, of course, but Again, just like you're saying, it's that holistic thing. So work with somebody.
Are you more embracive of the weight gain now? Because before, weight gain equals bad, right? Like, are you more like, all right, gonna put on some weight now?
I was less worried about the weight to begin with.
Yeah, okay.
It was always the fat for me. You know, there's a picture that I'm sure you'll show, if you go to the Instagram, you'll see it. It's my side-by-side with my transformation, where I'm at Disneyland, I'm looking sideways, I'm making a fight pose towards the camera, and there's just this voluptuous sack of gold hanging off my middle.
There's a loot goblin.
And so that was always in terms of my feeling about myself, that was the goal. On the other side of it, I want to be able to lift 180 pounds and carry it a quarter mile. Because if somebody is in a position where they need attention, I need to be able to physically move them wherever I need to move them. Right? And so the metrics that I'm aiming towards are slightly different, but more to punctuate the point that the weight was not the issue. It was the fat. It was the lifestyle. I could bulk back up to 260 pounds in muscle if I really wanted to and be healthier than I ever was at 180.
Do you think, because for me, you know, I've only been on like one half of your journey, right? Of course. Think about your first day, and then the last time I saw you when you were full on sprinting like a 300-pound sled up and down the grass. Did you ever think you could full on sprint and push multiple times? You did it like 2 or 3 times, not even just once, like 2 or 3 times.
Was that the client event where I had to help you into the office and get you food so you didn't pass out?
That was one we did
recently.
Yeah.
We did it December as well.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
did you ever think, you know what I mean? Like,
I never gave myself the hope.
From being in the hospital every 3 months to like full on sprinting a several 100-pound sled up and down the grass.
I never gave myself the hope. And even now, sometimes to my detriment, but usually to my benefit, when I'm going in and I'm working in the gym, it really is just, what can I do?
Yeah.
What can I do today?
Yep.
And then every once in a while, I look back over the data or I see a change and I go, oh, wow, okay, yeah. I'm doing it.
Yep.
And to be able to be at the point where now I can pretty much eat what I want. I can pretty much do what I want. And my body for the first time is serving me instead of me needing to perpetually fight to make it another week, another month.
Do you feel strong physically and like mentally? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if you can relate to this, but there's that moment like when I was skinny, dude, I really felt weak physically, but also like
mentally,
emotionally, like I'd let people walk all over me. You know what I mean? Did you ever notice like when you start to like get bigger,
strength isn't like a pride.
Your presence gets bigger. Have you ever noticed that? Or maybe you tolerate less stuff with people, or you found yourself being a little bit more like, hey, I don't think I would have said that in this meeting at work before, but I'm so glad that I told them like, no, we need to, you know, put my foot down. Or
I've always been a little audacious. Comes with the lack of social awareness, which is great. But I have noticed that people treat me differently. Clients treat me differently. Like I said, I've been an entrepreneur. I've consulted for a lot of businesses, and when I was at my heaviest, it felt like there were more times I was being told no than yes. Yeah. And
you feel like you
it
had
wasn't
to prove
because
yourself
the advice
more?
was bad.
Yeah.
But it was because there's an immediate perception problem.
Yeah.
Right. And now that I'm trim, I'm prim, I'm proper. The fact is, monetarily speaking, right now I have less available to me than I've had available in the past. Yet somehow I have more people who want to start businesses.
Yeah.
I have more people who want my advice.
Your wealth is bigger now than it was back
And
then.
at the end of the day, when somebody actually opens up to me, this is the secret. It isn't even necessarily the way that I look. It is the fact that they know I am putting in the effort when I'm not in front of them, which means that they can trust me to do what needs done.
Yep.
Because I don't give up on myself, so why would I give up on them?
I love that.
That is huge. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to our podcast number 17.
17.
And this has been huge. We can sit here and talk for hours and hours and hours. So thank you guys for tuning in. And anything else do you want to share with the listeners?
You matter, and your effort is always in your control. There is always a choice. So whether that's today, meaning just getting up and taking a shower, doing one more rep, getting just a little bit tighter on your meal plan, or reaching out to somebody for help, or doing the help that someone else needs. This is your day. This is your time. You got it.
Love it.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being on, Alton. This has been great. Thank you, Nik, for sharing your side of the story. This is actually the first time he actually shared this publicly. He shared this to me before.
It's hard to talk about, like, what we did, but for Brian's memory, and just because of what it is that we do, and we're in the business of helping people, not the business of making cash off of people.
Correct.
It's important to share these things, and
one of the advice that I always give: chase your passion. The money's gonna come.
Yep.
If you chase the money will never be enough.
Yep.
Period.
Yep.
Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sharing our videos. Thank you for sharing our podcast to your friends and family. We'll see you guys next time.